Hello, my name is Gisela Pink and I'm here with my co-host Julia Lisk. Welcome to Intimate Leadership. This episode is brought to you by Transformation Space. More about that later.
Hello, Julia. Hello, Gisela. How are you?
Yeah, I'm great. So we're here today with Freya Summers.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
Super. So tell us a little bit about Freya.
Freya, she lives in Nottingham, but she works in Leamington. She's got 2 children and a husband who works in corporate finance. In her early career, she amassed extensive experience working with a number of prominent regional law firms. She further honed her experience in Thomson Reuters. In 2021, Freya made a return to private practice, embracing the flexible opportunities presented by post-COVID world. She's a corporate partner at a top-tier legal firm in the West Midlands, and she specialises in corporate mergers and acquisitions. She's a key member of the corporate team, 4 exceptional partners in Genarmes they are. And notably, the team is a predominantly female, a rare and commendable distinction in the law sector.
COVID was a tremendous experience for everybody. I don't know what was your experience, but there were many tipping points in people's lives. Did you experience that?
I have 2 views on COVID. One is, in the moment, how did it feel? Isn't this awful moment? At the time, I'd already stepped away from private practice, and I was writing for Thomson Reuters. My role there was to write precedent documents or commentary on legal matters that are coming through the day. And obviously, everything was then COVID, day in, day out. So I was in lockdown, at home, with a 3-year-old. I was pregnant and I was writing about COVID. So my whole life was COVID and it was exhausting, so difficult. It was a really tricky age to keep a 3-year-old in the house. I'm still trying to hold down a full-time job at the same time. My husband is also in a very similar field to me, albeit on the accountancy side. So we were both kind of fighting our way through this, and then also being completely consumed by what was going on kind of in the outside world
On an emotional level.
Yeah, exactly. And there was no switch off from it for me because I was writing about it at the time. So it was a really challenging time. You know, there are some great parts of it as well, you know, having extra time with hubby at home, and I had my second. It meant that he could be at home more, and all those nice things that did come out of it. The other part of it is just the huge impact it had on my sector and my ability to come back to private practice and to really embrace the kind of benefits of this more flexible world. And then, do I think, you know, that things have changed for the better, and do I think that things are going to continue down this road? I hope so, and yes, I do think it has changed for the better. So
it has changed also in the work dynamic.
Yeah.
It has changed in the way we relate to our teams, wherever they are.
Yeah.
So you work from home most of the time, and you haven't gone back into being in your lovely premises. Do you think that at some level we've lost that personal contact with our teams?
I think because the majority of us now work from home, I think we've adapted and we've genuinely changed the way we work. So we make sure that we have additional touch points in the day so that everybody comes together and we have those kind of sort of round the water cooler chats, but you do them live on Teams and you do whatever. And I think if you've got a team that's adapted well enough to that, I don't think there's too much difficulty with adopting that. Now, what I find a really interesting question is the impact that is going to have on the junior end and the young people coming into the workforce. You know, I sort of sit here and go, well, I'm long enough in the tooth, I'm senior enough in my, you know, I'm a partner now, so I can manage my own workload, I can do whatever, I know what I'm doing, I can go on a call and not panic 5 times before it answers, you know. And I'm sitting there in that role that I don't feel I need, particularly the kind of training or support or whatever.
The mentoring that you gather in the room.
But I wonder the impact on our kind of trainees in a legal profession, or our junior lawyers. You pick up so much, and I say this every time we're in the office. I think I'm a big advocate of take those phone calls out on the floor. Because you're training the juniors at that point to know how to speak to people, how to deliver messages to clients, how to interact with those people. And that, I find, you know, that's not something that's easily taught. You've got to adapt to make sure that we're not losing out on those parts. And this is always the debate, isn't it? When you hear people talking about, are we going to return to the office? And this is always touted out as a big we're missing that human interaction or whatever. But yes, we are, but we can manage it. And, I make sure that I have check-ins with the kind of junior members of the team. We always have a Monday meeting. We always do these kind of bits and bobs. And, I do then go, actually, I have got a call with a client. It's on Teams. There's no reason that my trainee can't sit in. We're very lucky to work in a very supportive team, manifesting through now having a predominantly female team.
And having met your partners, I agree. I mean, they're very open-minded.
They are huge.
But that's not the norm.
No.
We talked about the challenge of being a highly skilled woman in the world of suits.
Exactly that.
So what was the most frustrating scenario for you in that environment?
The most frustrating thing is the inflexibility and the sort of traditional, we are lawyers. We're going to sit here. We're going to put our jackets on our chairs and be the last ones to leave because that shows that we're great lawyers. The previous firm that I worked for, that was very much the ethos. You were rewarded for inordinate chargeable hours. You were rewarded for being at your desk. If you were there till late night, you'd get a pat on the back and taken to the pub for a drink. When I came back after my first, I couldn't do that. It turned into, no, we've made this agreement. I'm working flexibly now. So at 5:30, I have to leave because I've got to be at the nursery gates. I've got to go and pick up my kiddo and I've got to do whatever. Kind of what came out after that was I was being seen to, I think the wording that I got told at one point was, I've lost my mojo.
Yeah.
And I was like,
stop behaving like a man.
Behaving how I behaved before I had kids and how you think it's okay to behave and what you want from me. What you're not doing is going, actually, isn't she doing a bloody incredible job, juggling all this, her work output's the same, whatever, she's really, really nailing this. Or even things have changed, it's not quite working. What can we do to support you where you need to be? You're one of our most senior female lawyers. What do we need to do? How can we make it work? Not, you've lost your mojo because you're not here until 10 o'clock at night.
Given that I mentioned suits, let's talk fashion.
What a great show.
Do you think you have to dress in a certain way to show power, to show skill? There's like a pretense that you have to show so that you can fit in that world?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's changing, and it's all about how you feel going into a meeting. Do you feel strong? Do you feel powerful? Do you? There is still a nature and a need, and I do it now
to dress for power.
Dress for power. And if I've got a big meeting and I know I'm going to be on, but I will make sure that I'm suited and booted and whatever. That said,
and power pose
exactly. But it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I did actually read something about how we as women think that if we're in a meeting and we lean forward and we are showing engagement and showing that we are in this meeting, that can be interpreted by men as being underconfident and being over-prepared. And what we should be doing is sitting back and making it look like we don't care.
Show the beer belly.
And you're showing how many after-work beers I've had and, been congratulated on. I think it would be, and I would say to any female coming up and wanting to develop their career is do whatever you need to do to make yourself feel as confident as you can be, whereas I do feel, there's a need to kind of throw that kind of business persona, but you'll, see, I've got lots of piercings and I've got whatever, and I normally have mad coloured hair. That doesn't make me any less of a good lawyer or able to give advice. Whatever makes you feel that you are showing your own personality and your skill set, then roll with that.
I was reading this week in preparation for our meeting an amazing statistic. 70% of men would rate a man higher than a woman to do the same job. Now, you mentioned before the difference between confidence and competence. And I made a note of that. Has this ever challenged you or silenced you in any way?
I think it's all a general kind of soup of concoction of matters and instances that this happens. And I think this is one of the biggest challenges for women in trying to be in leadership or trying to be, showing their influence on boardrooms or whatever industry they may be in, is I feel that women are challenged on their knowledge much more than a man would be if he was giving the same piece of advice. So if a chap comes in and goes, cat sat on a mat, everyone will be like, oh yes, great, straight to the point. That's excellent. That cat really was on the mat. I can really feel it. It's, there's no need to pussyfoot around. That's, the cat is on the mat. If a woman comes in and says the exact same thing, automatic is, well, what mat is it and how is it sat? And are you sure it's sat and not lying?
With how
long has it been there? Is it going to be there for a long time, or is it just paused, not sat?
Yeah.
And that's the difference.
Unlock your leadership potential with Transformation Space. Get an exclusive deal on our behaviour report with a personalised coaching session. Discover your strengths, understand your unique behaviours and learn strategies to excel. Normally £150, now just £75 for listeners. Don't miss out. Transform your leadership journey today. Contact Afshan at transformationspace.co.uk.
There is no autonomy around what a female is saying. It's you are challenged more. The level or the expectancy of what we are producing has to be so much greater just to get an equal footing of what we're saying. And that's massive in any and to get that, and it's a real authority gap. It's so why am I challenged and you are not? So yeah, and I think that's, it all comes down to that. And there are so many instances, and I think this is the challenge. And we talked about when we first talked about how I feel this way now, having been in the workforce for a couple of decades, and I think there are so many instances now that I would have just shrugged off. In my 20s, I just shrugged off. No, it's just me. I've got to crack on. I've got to keep doing it. I've got to keep doing it. But it just keeps coming in waves and waves and waves. And then it amounts to, no, actually, this is not okay. This is, we are trained by all of these tiny little incidences. And we talked about how many times men interrupt in meetings and how much time they get of hogging the floor, and how, their work doesn't get challenged. And it's all of these small moments of undermining female authority that ends up in it being predominantly male boardroom.
It's sad that we need to toughen in a way to fit in, to be able to cope with it. Like there's some additional skill that we need to develop to actually be in that room. When, if I was a man, I wouldn't have to do that. I wouldn't have to defend myself or my ideas. It would just be, you give your idea and they say, yeah, good idea, let's do it. And there's no further conversation about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, what I was going to say was, given that you're now working in a practice that's predominantly female, do you think your growth and maturity and development would have been as quick if you'd been in your first practice?
Yeah, well, I hope, you'll have to ask my juniors this. You'll have to ask my juniors this, but I hope that we are providing an environment where what seem, insignificant moments don't happen. They don't happen. We all have the floor. Nobody interrupts and I'm very conscious, especially with the kind of male members of our team who will do it unconsciously. It's not something that they will do, but it's so ingrained into everybody's psyche and society that it'll just happen naturally. But therefore, it's up to myself and the other female partner to stop them and say, no, hang on. Let's just go back. Let's just go back to that point and let's make sure that everybody's got the floor and everybody's got enough time and everybody can, do that. I mean, I think there's lots of statistics around how actually female can be much more effective leaders because they are much more collaborative. They are much more
empathic.
Yes, exactly. And so I would hope that the feedback from our juniors is that they are learning and training in an environment where it really doesn't matter, and none of these kind of unintentional biases come out and play out. I wish that I could experience it myself from a junior perspective. The only influence that I had coming through and growing up as a lawyer was very much this male-dominated environment, and the only kind of female influence I had was what I would call the queen bee. I want to be the sole woman that sits on this board, and I'm going to do it because I've acted like a man and I'm just played with boys, and that was my only influence. And I'm really passionate about showing or demonstrating that effective leadership can be undertaken by doing it the way that we want to do it and is empathetic to how the female psyche works. And we've been
leading by example is brilliant.
Absolutely,
because
that
people who are learning from you, they will then teach their trainees.
Exactly.
So is it risky appointing a woman, a highly skilled woman, for a top job? Is it a risky move or is it an advantage?
I think it's an advantage. The example that I give here is, I think depth of experience will always be an advantage to any situation, whether that is gender, it is race, it is class, it is whatever. You can only see good things, and you will never be able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. I think that's always, try and, soak up as much information around other people's experiences. But if it's not a lived experience, it's hard. It is hard. And so making sure that kind of level of diversity exists can only be a good thing. So it will feel risky, I'm sure, for the guys that are doing it, but I think that the outcome, and there's loads of stats now about how certain,
But why aren't there more women in boards?
I think
why do women not get appointed?
I think it's probably a combination of loads of things. I think it's probably a combination of all of those small unconscious biases that make it so difficult for women's ideas to be heard, women's voices to be heard, women's autonomy around authority to really be there. And that then becomes difficult. And then you look at, you're combating against a societal belief that women should provide a greater proportion of childcare and caring duties, whether that's elderly parents or kids or whatever that may be, or role or responsibility around the home. And that this is not just, this is the board expecting the women to do that and therefore we're not going to give them things. That's also our own internal knowledge of society. We talk about mum guilt all the time, and that's us because society is making us feel guilty for not being at home with the kids and wanting to have a career.
Or juggling.
Doing whatever. Yeah.
Being in the recital. Yeah. And being in the board meeting.
All this. And it's this small chipping away, I think, at women in all of these instances. You've given a fabulous example there of no one would bat an eyelid at all if my husband was not at a school play. If I'm not there,
well, you have to put the man on the WhatsApp friend.
Why is she not here? Or if Tom, my husband, takes a call in the playground, no one cares, no one's looking at it. If I'm on the phone, everybody's, what's she doing?
Power,
and it's nuts, and it's all of those pressures. So it's internal pressures, societal pressures. It's the unconscious kind of.
So women also contribute to that.
Well, hugely. We do. And I think there is internal and an internalised misogyny in society, in women as well. And I think that's, if you go, okay, well, if I was doing a kind of word play with you guys, and I said, if we have a male and a female, and I say certain words, I say home, or I say office, or I say whatever, you naturally go, well, I would associate the kind of, is it male, is it leadership, that kind of thing. And it's all of these, and the pressure of all that makes it so much more difficult for women to succeed, so much more difficult for women to have it all, and therefore we end up in exactly the situation that we've got now, which is, we are underrepresented at leadership level in every sector
in the world. What is success for you today from the outside? Every time you speak about your husband is very lovingly, and you speak about your children, and it's beautiful to hear that. Mm-hmm. And you speak about your job. Yeah. You're very fulfilled.
Yeah.
You love what you do.
Yes.
You're very skilled and amazing at it. But do you feel successful?
I feel successful because I feel I'm in a position now where I can help to influence change. And I think that is a real kind of pinnacle of success for me, which is, can I now utilise my own experience, my own intellect, to help change the world. And that feels very grandiose of me to say, but that's how it is. And I feel very grateful to be in a position now where I can spend time talking to you both about these kind of things, and I can use my position at the firm to help. It's not just young females, it's everybody. It's the whole firm will benefit if we develop these kind of things. Success.
Sorry, not just the firm, the clients,
absolutely.
They just understand that there's a voice, or there's permission to have a voice.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a demonstrative part of success for me. But then, you have all the usual stuff, which is, I feel very grateful that, I've got to the point in my career, I've had I work with a really great team that is, very supportive. And I'm going to say team at home and at work. Yeah. It's a really interesting one with Tom. He is very much an ally. What I'm hopeful of is my influence on him. He's aware of his own bias, and he's aware of his own presence, and he's aware of interrupting women, and he's aware of all these things, and that's really important too. We can have these.
So is that because he's married to you? Is that because he's actually learned it himself?
A bit of both, I would say. A bit of both. I like to ram it down his throat, I'm not going to lie. But, you know, I make sure that, you know, if I find a really interesting article or I do whatever, I will forward it to him and sort of say, look, you should read this because, you know, it impacts your viewpoint. And he's the same, not just on the gender, but also, you know, he's involved in his D&I community, and it's really important to kind of have that influence over senior men as well, I think, and, you know, really understanding the kind of experience that we're going through and having them on board.
When I introduced you, I was saying about your work with Women's Aid.
Yes.
So the experience that you've gained in your professional life, what skills have you actually transferred over to doing your voluntary work?
Well, my work with Women's Aid charity just kind of came about where, and I'll be really open and honest with you, I spent a sort of summer reading up on domestic abuse, and I read an awful lot of kind of feminist topic books and podcasts and articles and whatever, and it was kind of in the aftermath of Sarah Everard. It was a really particular moment for me, and so it was kind of at that moment that you just think, you know, this is horrendous. And it made me have conversations with the men in my life that probably should have happened way beforehand, and, you know, calling out the guys on their group chats. You know, it's not acceptable to make a joke about women being in the kitchen. It's not acceptable to do that, and that's not the life, you know, I would be expecting my daughters to be involved in. So you've got to really call out that moment. So it was kind of on the back of that, and I had this level of rage. That came out, and I was like, I need to do something positive with this. I need to do something positive with it. And so I contacted the Women's Charity and I said, what can I do? What can I do to help you? And so I work as kind of a strategic partner for them. So if they have a particular legal issue, then I will, you know, I deal with kind of general legal issues for the charity. There's not an awful lot of corporate finance that this charity is doing, but it's helping women that really are trying to make a change and really helping those in the most desperate of needs. And if I can help them to get a better deal with their landlords, or I can help you get a you know, have that awkward conversation to get them out of this contract, or to help a bit of negotiation, then absolutely I'm going to help them do that. It's, you know, giving them, I think it's giving them a slightly more senior voice is the way they put it to me. Well, which is, you know, it's hard for them. They're a women's charity, you know, there are an awful lot of landlords or contractors or whatever that will take advantage of that, going, you know, these guys, you know, we'll get it through. And then as soon as it comes out and it says partner, whatever at the back, I slightly got a different reaction.
Well, it's harnessing your confidence and your expertise.
Yeah.
You know, it's brilliant that you're doing this.
Because I have been, again, I'm saying brought up in a world where, you know, I'm not fazed by going into those negotiations. I'm not fazed by having to deal with 5 men. I'm not fazed by that. It's utilising that confidence to come in and go, do you know what, I can use this and I can help them by doing that.
Do you do something for you outside work?
I do a bit of everything. So I train, you know, and I swim most days, and I kind of do a bit of that. But at the moment, we're renovating our house, which is just fantastic. Bought a house that was built in 1902 and hadn't been touched since the 80s. And so we're going through the process of kind of finding things, you know, buried deep in wherever, and it's fantastic, and I absolutely love it. So that takes an awful lot of my time and energy and Instagram scrolling. So that's kind of what I do. But yeah, then the kids, you know, they take up an awful lot of time. And then, as Julia said, my last thing is I've spent 7 years, my eldest is 7, telling her wild stories about a small chameleon that goes on various adventures. And I'm writing them down. At the moment, I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do with them, but whether it'll just be a book for the girls to take on and tell their kids, hopefully, or whether or not I can get somebody.
But it's always a message in those stories.
I've utilised it to help the kids over some stuff when it's been, you know, this is a tricky time. And I remember very much so that we talked about when Georgie was starting school, the chameleon was also starting school, and how she felt about it and how she whatever. And if you can utilise those, and even down to little things like going to the dentist or going for her jabs, I've always gone, right, that's coming up in a week, I'll make up a story about Delilah doing that, and then we'll be fine, because then I can sit her in the chair and remind her.
Because it's actually historically noting what your children are doing. Yeah, exactly. So in years to come, you can read that.
And even if it's just for us as a family, it would be great to have them jotted down. But yeah, no, they're very excited about it.
Freya, we're coming to the end of the podcast, and I'd I'd like to ask you, have you thought about what your legacy is going to be? Or is there anything that, before the lights go off, is there anything that you'd like to achieve?
I would like to leave behind, it's easy for everyone to say a better world than when I started it. And I think my legacy, I hope, is making it easier for women to be in the legal profession and, succeed at it. And I think the way that I am doing that and colleagues are assisting with that is just making it more flexible, more achievable, and, an easier place for women to be. So I think that's how I would like to see my kind of legacy of being, I hate the word, but I'm going to go with it, but a trailblazer into, this is the correct way of how we should be doing it. I don't think within my lifetime we'll see this authority gap having been particularly squeezed, but we've got to do something, and that's why we're here. We've got to do something to help that, because of the work that we're doing and the life that we lead. My daughters or my daughter's daughters can look at it, and it's not a question of, isn't it amazing that this one female has got onto this board? Hopefully by that point we won't have female leaders, we'll just have leaders.
Exactly. Equality, proper equality. Yeah. So does it bother you what's happening in the world? Does it affect you?
Yeah, I think it affects everybody, I think, and in different ways. I think we have a responsibility to be aware of it and to provide whether or not, I've become wildly more outspoken, the older I've got, but why would I not be? Why would I not be? I'm not saying that anybody's opinion or whatever is incorrect. Let's have the discussion. Let's make sure it's out on the table. Let's open it up to a wealth of experience and knowledge. And
that's refreshing to hear, because given your legal background, you would expect somebody in the law not to be outspoken. And it's a privilege to speak to you.
No, thank you.
I just want to say thank you for coming here today.
Thank you for inviting me.
For being open, and there's no script, just being you. It's very refreshing, and also I feel empowered by sharing the space with you. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's been great to talk to you both.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julia.
Thank you, Gisela.
We want to thank Transformation Space for their support today. And that is the power of intimate leadership. Thank you for listening.